Hello, everyone, and welcome to this breakout session brought to you by B Lab Europe and the B Corp community. We're delighted to be a part of Regeneration 2030. And for this breakout session, we'll be talking about using business as a force for good, the what, how, and why of the B Corp movement. We hope you've already had a fantastic event so far, that you were able to tune in to our last session around multinational engagement. And now you've come to the table asking yourself, what is this B Corp movement all about? How do I get involved? And why is this even important? My name is Joey. I'm the certification manager for B Lab Europe, based in Amsterdam, but of course active all across Europe. And with me today is Katie Hill, who is our executive chair of B Lab Europe. Furthermore, we have three amazing guest speakers from the B Corp community, who I will just introduce in a little bit. But before we go there, what are we going to bring to you today? We'll have three main topics to talk about. The first is about economic systems change. And this is really about why does the B Corp movement exist? And what is the change that we seek? Furthermore, we'll talk about B Corp, about the certification, about the impact assessment, and how you can get involved. And like I said, we'll be hearing from three amazing guest speakers from the community who will share their stories and their experiences with you in the hope of inspiring, as well as giving you a bit of practical tips and tricks to get started. Before we start, however, I'd like to know a little bit from you. So if you want, please go to the Grip app and join us for this little poll. The poll is, from where are you joining this breakout session? Are you live in the Parma event, calling in from home, or even maybe long distance from other continents? And so I'll give you a few moments to submit your answers. Good to see you all joining. And without further ado, I think we're going to get started. And the first thing that we want to talk to you about is about systems change towards stakeholder capitalism and the role of the B Corp movement in this. I'd like to give the word to Katie Hill, who's the executive chair of B Lab Europe. Katie, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here and to have these marvelous guests with us, and for you to be interested in what we're doing and the change we seek. This is a really collaborative effort. We're never going to do this on our own. So we hope that you go away from here feeling motivated and engaged to be part of this systemic change we seek. B Lab, just to give you a little bit of an introduction into B Lab. B Lab is the economic systems change agent that is building out the B Corp movement. And B Corps will come to companies that really work for the benefit of all. B Lab's vision is to create an inclusive and an equitable and a regenerative economic system that benefits everybody. So really moving away from the idea of shareholders being the dominant party that have to dominate all the decisions in the boardroom, which was so strong in the 20th century. Joey, you could move to the next slide. And really focusing on the stakeholders, all the different contributors to the business have a stake in what actually is done with the business, how it's governed, how decisions are made, how the benefits are divided, and with a real view to the future generations who are going to be part of the legacy for these businesses. So this vision of changing from the shareholder maximization of returns to one of stakeholders is really a theme that you're seeing in the press and in all through, I think, citizens and the media now, even more so because of, I think, the crisis and the critical times we're in. But actually, in 2006, B Lab had this vision. I really do unbelievably recognize how foresightful the three founders were to think about what it was that we needed to do to encourage a business to think about the impact that they create with the same rigor that they usually think about with their financial returns. And they realized there were some real problems in trying to do that. This was based in the States where, yes, the shareholder primacy maxim was probably strongest of all places in the globe, but these principles hold true across the board. So they identified three key things that they wanted to build on through the B Corp movement. The first one was, when we talk about a company being sustainable, are we talking about the same thing with each each different company, or are we cherry picking which suits this company may not be the same metric as another company? So they created what is called the B Impact Assessment that Joey will talk more about, which standardizes how we think about the impacts we're trying to create. And it's a broad, holistic impact assessment that covers all the different aspects of a business. So it's not a straight vertical like some of the standards which we hugely recommend and believe in. It's not just looking at one aspect of a business, it's looking across the board. So that was the first thing they said. Let's compare apples with apples. Let's create a standard assessment. The second thing they identified was that there was actually a really contrary legal structure that the companies were operating in. If they wanted to operate for the benefit of everybody, they actually were really constrained by the legal structure that encouraged and pretty well enforced them to maximize returns for shareholders. So they created a legal momentum and a legal form that locks in this commitment, not just to shareholders, but to all the stakeholders. And this is a really important building block because this accountability goes beyond and complements the performance that the assessment creates. And then the third part, which is where we all come in, and you all come in, is around creating community of leaders that will drive the change and exemplify it. And that's why it's wonderful. We have three such examples with us this afternoon, because it really is by seeing them that you know that this is all possible. So 13 years later, actually, this is the progress. It's a pretty good checklist, I think, of progress. And this is because people recognize the needs. 3,500 certified B Corps, all reaching the performance standard, embedding the legal commitment into their articles. More in the rest of the world than there are in the US now. 38 states have created the legal structure that allows for companies to be considered a benefit corporation and embeds this in. So any company in these states and in Italy for Societe Benefit, and in Ecuador and Colombia and British Columbia, Canada, have all adopted this legal structure. But for those countries where we don't have that, we can still adapt our own articles. But so there's a real progress on building a legal regulatory framework, and we're really excited about doing more with this with Europe. There are then 10,000 companies who've adopted this. They're not all B Corps with the performance assessment, but they've taken that legal form. There's 100,000 users of the B Impact Assessment from all over the globe in all sectors and industries. Massive take-up of interest in looking at assessing their impact. There's, for B Lab, a global partner network of 7 different global partners. I think we're on every continent except Antarctica. And there's one unifying goal, which is summed up in the Declaration of Interdependence, which is we have to treat each one as though people and planet matter, and we do what we would want to see done to us, we do to others. So really, we were wanting to change the entire economic system. It's no big dream. It can be done, but we have to do this in partnership. We want to change how money flows. We want to change how companies are listed on the public markets. We want to change what conditions stock markets work. We want to work together with partners, and we want to seek this regulatory change. And so the next few slides I'm going to go through are examples of these kinds of changes we're seeking. Sorry, I've just gone back to slide 11, which is just the chart. You might be interested in the chart of, sorry, Joey, that one just describes how the growth of the B Corp movement, you notice how it takes a little while to get going, and then there's this exponential growth. And I think you would say even in the COVID crisis that we're in, more and more companies are really looking at themselves and saying, I want to be part of this. This is the future of business. So that's very exciting. And then moving on to the next slide was just an example of how we've built this movement globally. What started in the US has now gone across all these different continents. And we're learning so much from each other. And the power dynamics are all changing. There's so much happening in Asia and South America, which Europe and the US are learning from, and vice versa. We're picking up an enormous number of currents across our network, which I hope benefits everybody. And then on the next slide, we just have this is where we are in Europe. These are where we actually have representations of the B Lab movement. There are B Corps in many other countries. There's a couple in Russia, there's one in Kazakhstan. But in terms of actual representation of the B Lab movement, this is where we currently have representation. And we'd be delighted to be in touch with you if you're in any of these countries and want to reach out. We'll show you all the contact links at the end. And then moving on from there, we want to just let you, the previous session was actually talking about multinationals, but just to give you an idea of who's actually involved in this movement. Yes, it was largely started and adopted by smaller companies, some really small companies and some sort of what we might call SMEs, and they are the backbone of the European economy, and that's absolutely great. But what's changed is that now larger companies are realizing that this is the way forward. They must start to address the challenges, and it is really difficult for them to transform, but they know and want to do so. Quite often they start with their subsidiaries, and you see here the bottom line are subsidiaries of companies on the top line, and the bottom line of companies are all certified B Corps, and they're shaping and influencing how their parent company thinks about this agenda. So rather lovely that you often have subsidiaries shaping the parent company, or smaller companies are influencing larger companies, much like the youth is influencing the elderly, and there's so many different dimensions that are changing, I think, in our ways of coping with such uncertainty. So this is just, I think, of interest to you to see that this isn't just a movement for small businesses. Whilst we recognise that they are often really innovative, there's also a drive from the larger ones. And then moving on to the next slide, you see there's got a lovely dynamic going on here. We see some public companies who are now certifying as B Corps, which I think is really exciting, that the public companies already, when they raise money, have an opportunity from their investors to present their sustainability and their B Corp credentials. And the companies on the left are ones you may have heard of. They're listed across different stock markets in the world. And then on the right, there are companies who are B Corps who have now gone public. So this is a growing field of interconnecting with the public markets, which I think is a sign of the maturity of the concept. And we will just talk a little bit more on the next slide, actually, about a couple of examples. Interestingly, the investor, one of the key things we want to do is change the way money flows. And we have to do that by encouraging investors to invest in impact, not just in finance. Now, we know that there is at least $3 billion worth of capital that has gone into B Corps in 2018. That is a massive understatement because a lot of these deals are done in private, so we don't know the full amount. But what's interesting, you just see the list of companies there, the investment firms there. This is mainstream investors, some of them are ESG investors, some of them are impact investors, but the universality of this is that they see the benefits of investing in businesses that are going well beyond just the profit line, because they realize these are good investments to make. So this is, I think, another example of the change we seek. And then here, this article in Fortune and another one in the FT is showing how actually the B Corp movement is beginning to it's interesting. It's talking about accelerating during the pandemic, and we are certainly seeing that. I know Joe, even his role, would probably agree that, you know, we've never been so busy, and we are absolutely delighted that so opportunity to have a good hard look at how they could make even more impact. And one thing on the right-hand side, the Financial Times article is saying, interesting, when companies are going to initial public offering, these ones that are coming with B Corps are a really interesting way of addressing the stock market's assumptions of what they're going to be investing in. And there's a lovely sort of subtle push into a sustainability through that, and we hope to see that grow. And the next slide just shows an example with Lemonade. Lemonade is a B Corp, a German US insurance B Corp, and it was the second B Corp to go public, and it was the most successful IPO of this year, and had no problem raising the capital at all. The triple lens that it has as a B Corp was seen as highly attractive by investors, which was very encouraging. So this is where we see on the next slide, I think we'll move to show how different companies are bedding this in. In France, I think you might have heard, if you heard Alexandre Heaven just talking a minute ago in Danone, in France, the HQ of Danone has adopted this new legal form, which is available in France, called Société à Mission, and they are an entreprise à mission, which means they have personally accepted and adopted their dual function to be a social and a financial business. And this is totally in line with their aim to be a fully fledged B Corp by 2025. What's interesting, on the right-hand side, if you want to sign and become an entreprise à mission, you must actually create an independent mission committee who hold you to account and make sure that you don't lose the way and lose your dual purpose. And this is an example with some fantastic leaders on their board to hold them to account. So this is a real landmark case. Another example I wanted to mention is in Brazil on the São Paulo Stock Exchange. Actually, there's a special index, their Corporate Sustainability Index, which has embedded different criteria from the B Impact Assessment into their Corporate Responsibility Index. If you want to be listed on that index, you have to think about the things that we are asking a B Corp to go through and meet their threshold for listing. And two such companies who are B Corps and are listed on there are Natura and Movida. So again, you see how we're kind of shaping the agenda by influencing some of these key dynamics. Now, really important, no one can do this alone. B-Lab would be absolutely never want to suggest it could do this alone. It's very, very keen to collaborate and create partnerships. And we've actually part of an initiative called Imperative 21, which is a global alliance of organizations who are setting the imperatives for this new economy that we're trying to create. This was launched in September, so just last month. And I really encourage you to get involved in any which way you want. There's a wonderful website, which we show you at the end. But it's all about driving this consumer and public awareness that we don't have to live with the system we've created. We can create another one. It's only man-made in the first place. It's ours to change. And so resetting, and you see behind me is the poster that was in the FT, Reset Our Economy for the Benefit of All, is the theme of this work. And other campaigns and initiatives that have been very much at the building block of the third plank of the B Lab's vision, which was to create a community of leaders. We've actually generated a global initiative with B Corps to Let's Get to Work. This came out of, and again, the next slide will show you, it came out of a response from the Business Roundtable, which is probably 180 of the most powerful companies in the US, who got together in August last year. If you remember that far back before pandemics, it seems a totally different epoch. But they actually looked at their functions and said, we are no longer going to be putting shareholders before everyone else. We're going to think really hard about changing the purpose of the organization. And in response to this, B Lab then created momentum to get companies to say to the Business Roundtable, we're here to help, come and join our community. Another initiative that we've done in a collective way and that we're working on over this next decade is the Climate Collective, the Let's Get to Zero initiative. And here we have already 700 B Corps and many other purpose-led companies who are all committed to getting to be carbon neutral by carbon zero by 2030. And this action was able to be demonstrated. They were able to be showcased at COP25, which is on the next slide, in Madrid, where the movement was able to be represented by the B Corp, one of the B Corp High Champions. So we've got a real initiative going on around collective action to drive change into the areas that we see are critical to make the difference. And then I think what we really want to encourage you to do is to think about whether any of this could be relevant for your business, for how you want to set up a business, or any of the research you might be doing, or any of the policies you may be involved in if you're in a local authority or a municipality or in a policy-making role. There are so many parts of the puzzle that we're really keen to develop. The stories, the data, the communities, the initiatives, the exchange of experience, the best practice, and we're on this journey together. We would be absolutely delighted for you to join us on it, and we will encourage you to contact us to do exactly that. And now I'll hand you back to Jerry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. for setting the scene for us and explaining a little bit more about all the trends we see in society, and that now stakeholder capitalism is becoming so much more prevalent than it used to be. And I think we're no longer just preaching to the choir, but actually this is becoming a global movement that affects all of us. And I would, through your words, encourage anyone listening in to come on board. Speaking of, we already have a few people that came on board. And so for our next part, we'll be hearing from two amazing speakers. And it's my great privilege to introduce to you Antoine Bodson and Virginia Yanquilevich, who will be speaking a little bit more about the background of their company and why they have decided to join the B Corp movement. And so Virginia, she's the CEO of Dopper, a company that makes reusable water bottles, and who has been a B Corp since 2015. And we'll be hearing from her in just a little bit. But first, I'd like to give the word to Antoine, who is the founder and the CEO of the Skateroom. Charles, can I give the word to you?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Very
Yes.
pleased to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me and to join today's conversation. Thank you very much. Would you have any questions, or do you want me to jump into it?
Sorry, Antoine, could you share a little bit more about the Skateroom as a company and the challenges you faced along the way? Why are you a company, for example, and not a non-profit?
Good question. Let's take it to the start from the Skateroom. At the early beginning of the Skateroom, we were not meant to become a B Corp. We were not even meant to be a company. Let's say that it has all started the day I have met Oliver Perkovich. Oliver Perkovich is an Australian guy, the founder of this Berlin-based NGO called Skateistan. The mission of Skateistan being to attract the kids into difficult countries, in Afghanistan mainly, and to bring those kids to interact between skating and education. Oliver had a small and tiny infrastructure in Afghanistan, and he was looking for some funding in order to create his second installation in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. And I was convinced by his program, and I decided to sell a collection of skateboard decks that I had since I was a kid. I gave him $50,000 by selling a few decks. And 3 months later, being at the opening of the skate park, I was hit by his program, by the power of the interaction between skating and learning. So I decided to dedicate the whole collection to be used and for Skateistan and for its development. Understanding very quickly that the collection would have a program, and I decided to become producer of those decks. So I had to organize it in a company, let's say it. Becoming producer of those decks would mean to go and reach the artists, to propose them to do a collaboration like the one I have just behind myself here. And to just let them know, okay, let's do this, but in order to fund Skateistan and to help those kids. Long story short, we had the chance to work with the MoMA, with all the museums around the world, and to dedicate 20% of the sales of the decks in order to fund Skateistan. What is interesting in the exercise is that by realizing the positive impact we were doing by donating the money, we were just meant, okay, let's continue this exercise and to be a good company. Of course, the first area in which we had to make choices was production. No, we're not going to continue to work in China with decks at $1.5, but we rather work in Canada at decks at $15, but to work with forests that are engaged, FSC, etc. Same thing for the inks we were using. Same thing for the CO2 emission linked to the transportation of our decks around the world for the consumers. What we have clearly realized during this exercise in the first 2 years was that we wanted to get as a better company, but we didn't have any structure. And at this point, we have discovered the B Lab and its B Corp program. And it gave us a guideline in order to improve how we were interacting with all the stakeholders in areas that we didn't really had in mind. So we decided to join the B Lab and B Corp journey. It's true that the first year we hadn't succeeded in our exercise because 3 of the main topics of the B Corp were not really thoughtful into our company. But at the second year, in the second exercise, we became a B Corp. So I do clearly consider B Corp as the basics of the company. I was telling my team yesterday during a conference at the NATO with Skateroom, okay, next stage would be to become a bestie into the B Corp movement, interacting with all the stakeholders. Would they be artists? Would they be a museum? Would they be a consumer? It is good to be positive, to have a positive impact through the journey of the product. Voilà, I would say that this is the first relation that we are having with the B Corp and how it is influencing all the decisions we are making on a daily basis.
Thank you, Antoine. And to your words, it seems so natural to you to use your business in such a way where it's not really about, not only about the commercial success, but really also about the impact that you make as a business. What would you say to everyone else that maybe isn't that far on their journey yet? What is the key lever that they should pull that they can use their business as a force for good?
The Skateroom was not meant to become a company and to earn money and to live out of it. Of course, when we have grown by the time, we were hiring more people, we were interacting with more stakeholders, etc. So there was an economic reality behind the project. I couldn't continue to take the money out of my pocket to make it living. So we had to fix the economic model. At the early beginning, I was donating up to 20% of the sales. In the next 3 years, we have realized that by donating 20% of the sales was too much. So we adapted the economic model, and today we are able to donate mainly 10% of the turnover and of the sales. The thing that we have realized during the exercise is our battle. I do consider consumption as a tool to be positive, to have a positive impact on the community. Many of us are over consumers. We are at the right side of the world to be able to consume. We are the lucky ones. And I think by engaging consumption to have an impact on the one who do not consume, it is a good way to support the other people on the other side of the planet. In the last year, we've been approached by many companies, them saying, how can we help you into your exercise? We love the way you interact with artists and with the social project. How can we support you? No, I don't want the BMW Foundation to donate 100K to develop the communication. No, I don't want Nike to do the same thing as a supporter, as a sponsor. Today, the real exercise in which we are is definitely to develop collections of collectibles, of products that are used as a consumable in the fashion industry, just behind myself with skateboard decks, and to engage those products to have an impact again on society by donating a percentage of the sales. We have supported Skateroom a lot in the last 6 years, and they have developed today 8 different structures around the world, in South Africa, in Phnom Penh, we're working on a major project now in Beirut, in Lebanon, etc. Those companies, why when we are making a skateboard deck with this incredible artist named Raymond Petitbon, selling it at the MoMA, being able to support and to fund the project in Bamiyan in Afghanistan with Skateroom, why would Kenzo wouldn't be able to make a sweatshirt with this? Why Moleskine wouldn't be able to do a notebook with this? Why all those brands, why Tommy Hilfiger wouldn't be able to make a whole collection of this, and to all jump together in the idea of scaling Skateroom to reach more kids into the story, and for them, again, to reach their employees, their consumers, to be all active on this. We cannot do the exercise alone. The artist cannot do it by himself, the retailer neither. So we have to be the whole chain of building the product, selling the product, buying the product, and yes, we all together can have this amazing impact. I've been working on this project. We are the Skateroom. We have developed this project called the Good Room today, which is the project in where we are inviting those very interesting brands who wants to be part of the journey, and all together we can considerably scale the exercise, take care of much more kids. Today, Skateistan is dealing with around 10,000 kids on a weekly basis, and we know by interacting with Tommy Hilfiger, we're working on a big project with them, and the New Yorker licensed all the visuals, the artistic drawings. They could develop, and they're going to develop a whole collection of this. But of course, when I'm selling one deck, they're selling thousands of T-shirts and sweatshirts. So the impact of the 20% of the sales going to positive project would scale them considerably.
Thank you so much, Antoine. I think that's a very open invitation for further collaboration.
It is.
Please, everyone at home, do check out the Skateroom and their amazing collections. They're really incredible. And without further ado, I'd like to give the word to Virginia. Virginia, could you tell a little bit more about your journey, your personal journey, but also your journey with Dopper as a company?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. Here I'm in the Netherlands at this moment. Very happy that I can share our B Corp story. And before telling this, maybe it's nice to tell you my personal journey, because it starts very, very long time ago. When I was already 13 years old, I already worry a lot about the world around me. And I was thinking, okay, why the world is so not on the right way divided, and so I decided to follow my heart, and I joined a group of people. And when I was 13, I helped during 4 years kids in the south of Argentina, where I'm coming from. And the reason I chose that place is because people were walking 5 hours a day for education, for going to school, and even longer for access to water. So for me, this was so shocking that then I decided to be a journalist, because I thought that nobody knew what was happening there. And I wanted to write the real story. So I wanted to be a storyteller. And then I worked as a journalist in Argentina for 5 years in a magazine. And then I follow my heart, and I moved to the Netherlands for love, which was really nice. I think many people in the room did the same. And then in the Netherlands, I really had a very nice time in different roles in marketing, communication, PR, and I was commercial director in brand consumer electronics. But it was a moment that I was representing that company, and it was very successful. And I was in Bulgaria for a meeting. And after the day, I went to my room to write the notes of the meeting. And I was sitting there by myself. And then all those images of the projects that I did in Argentina when I was 13 went to my mind. And I was then 42. And then I thought, wow, what is happening? And then I questioned myself what I'm doing all this energy for, at the end, only a commercial purpose of the work I was doing. And then I wanted to be closer to that feeling that I had from when I was young. And I decided to follow that day in Bulgaria. I decided to follow my heart and do something that will change the world, where I can put my energy and my knowledge in something that I really feel. And because when I was young, I came into situations where clean drinking water wasn't obvious, then I wanted to focus on that. And the people of B Corp asked me if I find Dopper, or did they find me? But actually, I sent a letter to Dopper because I saw once a Dopper in a store, and I was reading the story. I said, oh, this is where I want to work. And this is the place what I can represent proud everywhere, because water is so essential for life. And I liked scuba diving, so I wanted to protect the ocean. So I thought this is the perfect match. And they hired me, so I was very lucky. And I'm the CEO of Dopper for already 3.5 years. And I can say that I came home when I started working for Dopper. And the reason is that the mission I really appreciate all these big companies becoming B Corp. I'm really happy that this is the movement. But for me, it was very nice to come to a company where from day number one, there was a mission. And that was the reason we exist, is to empower people to choose reusable over single-use plastic bottles. And yeah, I'm really behind the mission, and I think yeah, I can represent it on that way. Dopper was already a B Corp when I started. Dopper was one of the first B Corps in the Netherlands, I think number 2, if I'm not wrong. And yeah, so this is where I am now. I don't know if you want to ask a question, or if you want me to continue.
No, I think we're all very much enjoying your very personal story, Virginia. So please.
Okay, I can go on. So for us, we want to create really a big way of change. And because I have this experience in the commercial companies, the end goal was to sell products. So I thought, okay, I can do it by Dopper. At Dopper, the same, but change behavior is totally a different story. So what we want at Dopper is that people will change a behavior, something that they do every day, or they buy mineral water bottles, or they leave their waste on the beach. So this is much complicated in our strategy. So we do it via education and awareness projects. But if you ask me what we need, is I define that we need really 2 big things. One is, of course, a lot of intrinsically motivated people that feel empowered to do it. And on the other side, we need the industry leaders, organizations that dare to make a big change and to join the movement. And I'm really aware that you can't do this alone. So I'm totally behind B Corp in this way to create a movement, to unite the forces to make big waves of change, as we call it. And the B Corp, when I arrived at Dopper, we got the invitation to do the recertification, the deep dive. And we had a conversation with our management team, who is going to take care of it. And everyone said, oh, this is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And I joined Dopper and I said, okay, maybe I should do it, because this is the best way to get to know my company. So I decided to do it by myself. Joey knows this because I was really on top of it. And I wanted to know everything that we were doing. And my drive was not to get a lot of points, was really transparency and improvement within our organization. So now, okay, there we do it on the right way, and there we can improve. And so we work really hard to engage everyone within the company to want to do better in everything that we do. So in the way we handle with people, with the factories, in the production, every aspect of our company. So I'm a proud member of the B Corp organization, and I agree with the discussions before that I will really appreciate if consumers could identify all those brands that are doing good and buy only good stuff, and support all the companies that are doing so many things on the right way. And this is the only way to let them grow, is to support them.
Thank you so much, Virginia. And I think the first step to do that, of course, is to move away from PET bottles and actually buy a Dopper.
Yes.
That's the number one thing to do. And something we haven't actually even discussed is that Dopper also has the plastic-free pledge, which is something very cool that anyone can do. So please do check that out as well.
Yes, the Dopper Wave. You can go to Dopper and sign the Dopper Wave. And this is your pledge to stop buying mineral water bottles and drink always from the tap.
Perfect. Do check that out. For the sake of time, we're heading back to the main materials. Let me pull back. So we're just moving forward from where we left off. And I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the B Corp certification and how you at home can get involved. And to do that, I'd just like to jump back to where Katie left off initially. And it is to talk about the founders of the B Corp movement. And as any good inclusive movement, these 3 white middle-aged gentlemen founded B Lab all the way back in 2006. And they set out on this journey to create a shining city on the hill, a company that could be an example for anyone that wanted to do good. And along the way, they found out that a lot of companies actually wanted to do this, but that they were restricted by the barriers in the market. And so you'll find that B Corp certification is not just about doing good as a business, but really changing the system. And so if you want to be a certified B Corp, there's actually three things that are a part of that. The one thing is to meet high standards of social and environmental performance, and these are assessed through the B Impact Assessment. It's to be transparent about the impact that you have as a company, which is published on the public profile on the B Corp website. And it's about the governance aspect. It's about changing your articles of association or adopting separate legal forms that include the interest of all stakeholders in their decision making. And so if you think of these three key characteristics, maybe some companies come to mind. And so I'd like you to go back onto Grip and just let us know, like, which B Corp companies do you already know? Or which companies come to mind if you hear this? We'll be collecting those answers. In the meantime, we're moving on with the content. And well, we'll skip this one then. And move into the certification process. Right now, there's about 3,500 B Corp companies globally. And they've all completed the same rigorous certification process. And so if you want to become a B Corp, like, the first thing that you do is to go to bimpactassessment.net and create an account to get started. This is free of charge. Anyone can do it. And on here, you can make a self-assessment that covers all activities of the companies and assesses the positive impact you have on your stakeholders. You should reach a minimum score of 80 points to be eligible for certification. And so once you reach that 80 points, you can submit the assessment for review. And this means that B Lab's Standards Trust will perform a review with your company, where we're going to validate and verify all the answers that you've given in the B Impact Assessment. And we do this through documentation review. We do this by verifying data points, but we also do this through dialogue. This is what we call a review call, because some things cannot just be found on paper, but they're actually integral to the business, the way that the business is conducted, to the business model. At the end of it all, we make changes, we make adjustments to the score, and the score should still be above 80 to certify. Once you get there, you sign the B Corp agreement and the Declaration of Interdependence, and you pay a certification fee. This is an annual fee that is based on the size of the company, and it ranges from 500 euros a year for very small companies, all the way up to 50,000 euro, even more if you're a big multinational. In this impact assessment, we only assess the positive performance of a company. However, there's also negative impacts that should be included. If a company does a lot of good, but also has a lot of negative impact on the other hand, then is that company really business as a force for good? And so this is what we assess in the disclosure questionnaire. If you can go one back, Katie. And this disclosure questionnaire assesses all kinds of material sensitive issues that are not scored, but that might be reasons why a company cannot certify. And so these are specific sensitive industries. These are sensitive practices, like tax evasion, for example. But these could also be any kind of issue that comes to mind where a company is not acting based on the values that we share as a movement. Now that you know how to get certified, let's take a look at that B Impact Assessment, since it's such an integral part of your B Corp journey. So the B Impact Assessment is a holistic impact assessment that helps you assess your company's performance across 5 different domains. It's not just an impact measurement tool, but also an impact management tool. What this means is that we help you get an understanding of your performance, but that you can also use this data to then come to action-driven improvements or understand your next step in your journey of using business as a force for good. If you go to the next slide, we can see all the topics that are being covered in the B Impact Assessment. And there are, like I said, there's two main ways in which we assess the performance of your company. The one thing is operational impact. And what we mean by this is all the day-to-day activities in which your company can make a positive impact. And so sometimes people refer to this as CSR. Right? So this might be related to benefits for workers, might be related to your company facilities, might be related to your environmental footprint, etc. And then we also assess something that's very unique to the B Corp methodology that we call impact business models. And impact business models are looking at the design or the intention of a company and the way in which a positive impact is always generated, no matter what, because it's integrated in the core of the business. On the next slide, we then see the key topics that are being covered in this impact assessment. And this ranges from governance to workers, to communities, to environment, and to the customers. In these 5 key impact areas, there's also a number of subtopics in which your company is assessed. So for example, if we assess the way that your company interacts with its workers, we might look at the financial benefits that are provided, but we also look at their career opportunities and if they're happy and engaged employees. Similarly for environment, we look at the way that your company manages its environmental footprint, but also all the individual environmental KPI, like carbon emissions, energy use, etc. On the next slide, we talk a little bit more about the impact business models. An impact business model is a very unique thing of the B Impact Assessment. And like I said, these are key design principles of why the company exists. So we see that it's unique to the company. It creates a significant positive effect for one of its stakeholders. And it assesses the core products or services or the design of the company. Many B Corp companies perform so well in terms of their social and environmental footprint because their business model inherently creates a positive impact. And hence why we're so happy to be in the Regeneration Summit, because the key areas that are being covered here are right in the B Corp alley. So on the next slide, we've given a few examples of how B Corp companies can create a positive impact on these areas, or how they are assessed in the B Impact Assessment. So if we talk about regenerative economy, it's about creating a planet, creating ecosystems that are regenerative in nature, with respect for humans, society, and the planet. And in the B Impact Assessment, we, for example, call this land and wildlife conservation. Similarly, for climate action, we need to address carbon emissions and all the ways in which these are generated. And in the Impact Assessment, we have a special impact business model that relates to this, which is called resource conservation. And then lastly, world happiness. Putting humans, people, at the core of business. And making sure we don't just assess our progress based on economic success, but also on the happiness of people. And this is what we assess in the Impact Assessment within the health and wellness model. I would encourage anyone at home to just try this out and see how your company performs compared to peers. Like I said, it's free of charge, it's fairly easy to use, and B-Lab's team is always available to help you. To learn a little bit more about other people who've used the Impact Assessment, I'd like to give the word to Karolina, who has helped Netguru become a certified B Corporation. And Netguru was only the second B Corp in Poland, and hence it was quite a remarkable achievement for them to become a B Corp. Karolina, over to you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. I loved hearing the stories of other B Corps today in this panel. I think our stories are very complementary in terms of how I can be the proud person wearing this little pin here with the Be the Change movement. So my very quick story to becoming sustainability lead of a B Corp company that Netguru is today is started at an NGO. I remember I was working at an NGO and people were asking me, do you get paid? And I was like, so there are these areas where we expect people to earn money, and there are these areas where people who do something for society or environment maybe should be volunteers. So that was the first that woke me up and actually made me work a little bit more in this area. And I joined Danone. And this is at Danone where I could say, for the first time, I went through something like the impact assessment, the one that you were describing like right now, because there was this responsible business ranking at that time in Poland, and I was going through the organization asking people questions about what we do for our employees, what do we do with our supply chain, how do we actually work with our product. And so that was the very beginning of me being more aware that sustainability and responsibility is not about charity at all. It's about the whole value chain. And fast forward to Netguru. Netguru is a consultancy, product design, and software development company that approached me and said, we want to be B Corp, come and help us. And I was like, wow, I mean, there's not so many companies saying from the very beginning that they want to employ somebody to help the company become the B Corp. So I was actually getting to know my new employer by, imagine this, asking 200 questions from B Corp questionnaire across different departments. And we went through the whole process that you have just described. So what I want to say is that it is not that difficult to people who are new to the concept. It is really clear in terms of what are our areas of responsibilities, what are our material impacts. So, for example, to us, the BIA assessment after we were certified led us to have to adopt a new vision. So since 2020, we are certified, and since 2020, we have this vision at Netguru that says sustainable digital world where everyone can realize their full potential. So we have placed sustainability at the heart of our vision, and we are actually moving forward with a lot of projects and changing the business model as well. It was the BIA auditor that asked us for the first time the question, how much effort and time do you spend on pro bono or low bono initiatives? So at that time, we thought only pro bono counts, but then he made us aware that whatever we do with social or environmental organizations counts as well. I mean, that was a nice story. I mean, we since then we are actually tracking how many purpose-driven clients we have, which is purpose-driven in terms of socially and environmentally, and we are also tracking our pro bono and low bono effort. So one of the outcomes is that we have many more indicators in terms of our input, and I would say it is difficult to have indicators in terms of the outcome. So this is why we are looking forward to the SDG Action Manager, but that's a separate topic, I believe. I don't know if you want to ask a little bit more. I have one more thing I wanted to say. Didn't say that yet. So wanted just to say two things. We had this disruption forum sustainability like 2 weeks ago. And for many months, I had this opinion that I don't want to sign any more commitments. I'm bored with commitments. Who cares about you can commit to anything. But I realized that making this commitment with B Corp is a tool for me, because I can go to anybody in the company and say, we no longer can not think about it. We no longer can not take it into account. So even if there were people saying we are not perfect yet to be a B Corp, for me, getting certified is about raising the bar internally in the company. So commitment it can be a first step, and this was one of the outcomes of our discussions around disruption from sustainability. And the second was that partnerships are super crucial, and we did that when the pandemic started. Netguru and many other IT companies get together to create Tech to the Rescue partnership to actually support NGOs to give bigger impact to the society, and this is what we did. I mean, there's a lot of stories to say. We don't have that time. We have 1 minute left. I'm aware of the time, so giving back the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Karolina. And I think there's so much more to learn, and that's also what is so interesting about being part of a community or about being part of a movement, right? You don't have to go through this all by yourself. There's many more others who've gone through the same journey as you do. Speaking of, there are a lot of resources available to you. We would pull them up on the screen, but I think for the sake of time, we will simply just forward them to you with all the materials of this session. But what's good to know is that the BLab team is available to help. Our website is bcorporation.eu. You'll find all the information you need there, or you can reach out to info@bcorporation.eu. The B Impact Assessment is a great tool to get started. So go to bimpactassessment.net if you want to start assessing your own company. And then lastly, it's not just about the work of BLab, of course. This community has brought forward so many great initiatives, so many great resources, and there's various community collectives that are out there, like the Climate Collective and Be Interdependent, which I would also definitely recommend to check out. Without that, we're wrapping up, and I'd like to thank all of the speakers here for participating and you at home for tuning in, and hope to see you next time.